Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is late June 2024. We're in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, a little town that I have a lot of admiration for. It's just a cool town with a lot going on, really a lot that people don't realize. And we stopped at the Pennyroyal Area Museum, mostly because they have some displays on the Hopkinsville Goblins, the Kelly Little Green Men, whatever you want to call them. This is a nice museum, actually a very exceptional museum, and they've embraced their weirdness. So I think that's very cool. But yeah, we stopped by recently, and I was here probably 10 years ago, and I thought it was a pretty cool museum then. To me, it had a darker feel. I don't think it was quite as open. And I still thought it was pretty cool then, but they have really hit it out of the park with the renovations and things that they've done lately. Just a nice museum. I think it's a few bucks to get in, and they've got some great displays on local people in the community, and of course the things they're known for, the Night Riders and the Tobacco Wars, the Kelly Little Green Men, Edgar Casey. And we stopped by, we looked around. I'll probably talk a little bit and just mention some of the things we saw. Of course, you can look too. I usually get sidetracked and don't talk about what we're looking at, but obviously they had a lot of displays on local high schools, local high school events, and just general personalities from Hopkinsville. I thought that was pretty neat. They had some, they had a display on kind of some everyday people in the area too, I thought. And I just thought that was kind of cool. And just for what it's worth, Hopkinsville is such a cool city. And it's, in my opinion, it's underrated. It's kind of under the radar. I don't think people get how much is going on in this part of western Kentucky. They've got Farrell's Burgers, and I'm going to put up another video about Farrell's. They've been making burgers in Hoptown for almost 100 years, and I think that's great. And we stop every time I'm in Hopkinsville. We stop there. It's just one of those things you absolutely have to do. We stopped at a place called Coffee Connection too, which was kind of across the street from Farrell's. It was ran by a very sweet lady. They don't charge for coffee or anything. You just kind of come in and sit down, and they were very pleasant. It's kind of a place for people that are probably having some hard times, and they have rules. And the place was clean. We didn't feel intimidated. Nobody nobody asked for money or anything like that. But we did have some great conversations with some locals there. And I was really impressed with Coffee Connection. I'll probably put up a video on them too. It just something really unique and something done with a lot of heart. And I just can't say enough about them. There's also a really nice visitor center in Hopkinsville. We stopped there. I got some freebies and talked to some more locals. And they also have the Trail of Tears Memorial Park and a little museum. This carving that we're looking at right now was inspired by the Trail of Tears. So you've got a lot of cool Native American and Cherokee history through this area. I'm definitely going to put up a video on our visit to that Trail of Tears park. Check out this sculpture. It's somebody really put a lot into this, and it's very impressive. Oh yeah, and You've got military right down the road. Just lots going on here. I mentioned before the Kelly Little Green Men, the Hopkinsville Goblins. Really interesting story. 1955, a family claimed that these small aliens, or small creatures, basically harassed them all night. They called the police. The police came out. The police didn't find anything. After the police left, they were harassed more. And I think it's a very interesting story. I know Kelly was having a festival dedicated to the little men at one point, and I think Hopkinsville is going to try to start doing that festival or kind of take that over. It's not been a consistent festival, but hopefully it will be. They're missing out on some revenue and some publicity there. Everybody loves a festival dedicated to a cryptid or an alien. And of course, there were UFO sightings that night, and you had a small family, a small country family reporting this. I know if you read some of the newspaper articles from that time, some people try to question their credibility or whether or not they were sober. There were several members of that family that saw what happened. Also, I know, somebody that grew up in a very southern rural area, in a very isolated area. I've seen things that I've had questions about, and I've been with family or I've been by myself. You check it out. You get a good look. If something doesn't look right, you keep looking until you figure it out. These people were country, to their credit, and they would have known what an owl looked like. They apparently spent several hours dealing with this attack. I think I think it's an interesting story, and it doesn't look hoaxed, and I it's one of my more favorite strange stories to read about, and that happened not too far from this museum. Of course, the tobacco wars happened in this area too. Black Patch Tobacco Wars. Oh yeah, there's a little information on it. You had a group of those guys. They wore masks, and they went out. Basically, they were tobacco farmers trying to get fair price for the tobacco they were growing, and kind of started a union. And if you weren't in that union, or if you weren't going along with them, well, they'd visit your house and have a little talk with you, and it might get physical. I compare that story. Oh, by the way, they had baseball in Hopkinsville at one point too. I love baseball history. Oh, and Edgar Casey stuff. Anyway, the Night Riders would go out and have a talk with you. The story kind of it reminds me a little bit of Breaking Bad. The people that start out as the good guys might not necessarily be the good guys at the end of the story. They get a little too vigilante, if you can think of it that way. So Edgar Casey, the Sleeping Prophet, was from Hopkinsville. I've visited his gravesite, not too far from here. Any local can tell you where it's at. And of course, there is a little flag there. If you go to the cemetery, you'll be able to find it easily. And they had a really cool display on Edgar Casey here at this museum, kind of recreating his office. He was also a photographer and very influential. And another guy that kind of, I don't know. I mean, he had a certain legitimacy to him. Obviously, some people might argue with that, but an interesting character to read about. Nonetheless, he would go to sleep and offer cures or suggestions for people on medications to take or something to take to make you feel better if you had some issues. He would also make predictions. And I'm sure people like the late James Randi would disagree that he had any special abilities, but there are other people that feel like he did. And they've kind of created this little office space. Even with their recreated couch, they invite you to sit down on the couch and contemplate the life of Casey. And I think that's pretty neat. Very well stocked gift shop. They had some books. Of course, they had several things on Casey. And I talked to the staff here. A fellow named Brett. There was a young lady we also talked to. And they had a lot of information about local history, Casey, the goblins. And I was kind of filming previously. Here's a few pictures I took from around the museum just to give you a clearer look at some of the things they have. They do have a walking tour. They'll give you a little brochure if you want to walk around and try to see some of the buildings in the area associated with Edgar Casey. I know there's at least one really good book. I've got it somewhere that kind of talks about Edgar Casey and his time in Hopkinsville. And of course, the Black Patch Tobacco Wars. I mentioned that earlier. Very fascinating story. A book called On Bended Knee covers it very well, and it's just another fun story. I grew up in Western Kentucky, and I worked a lot in tobacco as a little kid, and that's work I would. Yeah, I'm okay with never doing that again. It's hard. Very, very nice display on the Civil War here, too. Of course, they had a little display on Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, both from Kentucky. Jefferson Davis from a little area not too far from Hopkinsville. And they have built a massive monument to him. I mentioned the staff here. We ended up talking to them for quite a while. They're trying to put on some programs, do some other stuff, and you could tell that they are just sincerely very excited about the town's history and what all it has going for it. Again, this is just another hotbed of weirdness, and if you want to even go out a little bit further away from Hopkinsville here in western Kentucky, you're not that far from Adams, Tennessee, home of the famous Bell Witch. Usually visit the Bell Witch Cave once a year. Last year I went twice, and they have a Bell Witch Festival. I think it starts maybe even in August or September, and it goes on for quite a while. They put on a few, at least 2 plays. I saw the Bell Witch play last year, and it was very well done. Check that out if you have a moment. Oh, yeah, and here at this museum, Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks was from the area, feminist black author. I saw she died at her home in Berea. I had no idea she was living in Berea. And I'm in Berea a lot. Probably at least once a month I find myself in Berea. Went to school there, met my wife there, and I'm very connected to it. And I was surprised. I just did not know she was living in Berea. Anyway, Pennyroyal Area Museum, what do you think? I'd love to hear from some people from Hopkinsville. I'd love to hear some of their stories, especially if you have any crazy supernatural ones. I'd love to hear some people that might have connections to Casey or the Little Green Men.